NASA 557, contact tower 128.15.
Caution, caution. Manual, fuel, manual, fuel.
I'm John Goglia.
I'm Greg Fife.
And I'm Todd Curtis.
And we are the Flight Safety Detectives.
Between us, we have over a century of aviation accident investigation and safety experience to draw on as we discuss issues that affect all of us.
So we are qualified to share our perspectives on accidents and incidents and what can be learned from them for the future.
We're proud to say that we have two sponsors that really relate to the topic of aviation safety: the Professional Aviation Maintenance Association, or PAMA, and Avemco Insurance. Later on in the show, we'll tell you how you can get a 5% discount on your insurance just for listening to the show.
We don't just dissect the official reports. In every episode, we identify safety issues and take the mystery out of accident investigations.
So maybe pilots and their planes can have safer flights ahead.
The Flight Safety Detectives is bringing on a new sponsor, Piston Powered, a power-by-the-hour program for owners of piston-powered aircraft that can stabilize the long-term cost of owning your airplane. Well, hello, John.
Well, hello, Todd.
And we're going to dispense with our usual banter back and forth because today we have a very special guest, Mr. Bob Pett, a glider pilot of some number of years, who has had a set of aviation experiences I think our audience will find fascinating. As many of you know who follow the podcast, we've been talking about the subject of UAP for several years now. And of course, most recently, that sort of thing has been in the news, both from congressional hearings and from mass sightings over New Jersey and New York. But we're not going to talk about events that happened in 2024, 2023. We're talking about an event that happened on August 9th, 2015. Mr. Pett was a pilot of a Grob 103, a high-performance glider, had a passenger in back, and from what I understand, this was the passenger's very first flight. And I'll let you take it from here and describe to us the day, how beautiful it was, how good the flight was, and when things turned toward the unusual.
Sure. It was one of the rare, beautiful days in the Catskills. Lift and thermals everywhere. You couldn't go wrong. You could stay up all day in a glider if you wanted to. And so I took my passenger. He'd never been in a glider before, and I wanted to get him over the mountains because that's really very scenic over there. And so we climbed up to 5,000 feet in a thermal, shot over to Windham High Peak, was over the mountains. And then I saw some other clouds to the northeast that looked very promising for very strong thermals. So we headed northeast, and we were descending. We descended till about 3,500 feet. And we're heading northeast. And all of a sudden, I look down, and I see this, caught my eyes, a little sparkle over the treetops. At that point, I would say it was maybe 500 feet above the ground. And my passenger also was looking down, and he said, "Hey, there's a drone down there." So we thought, that's cool. We don't see many drones around here. And so I flew into a thermal, could feel the lift under my left wing. So I started turning into the thermal. And as I'm coming around my turn, I'm looking at Windham High Peak, and I could see the drone due to that bright little light, purplish, white, kind of kaleidoscopic type colors coming off of it. And I noticed that it flew up the side of Windham High Peak rather fast. I mean, I'm still turning, and it reached our altitude, and then it started coming back towards us very quickly. And as I'm turning, this object came right next to my glider on my right wing. And as I'm turning, I mean, it didn't stop there. It cut right in front of me. That's why my report was a near miss. It was really close. It was right in front of me. And as I'm continuing to turn, it comes off on my left side. I got a good look at it at that point. It was a very strange looking thing that you looked at it, you would say, this is not an aerodynamic object. There's no way this should be in the air. It was maybe 3 feet wide, 6 feet tall. It had a very luminous top to it. You couldn't really see the details of it, but underneath that luminous top was a half super black hemisphere that was just non-reflective black. And underneath that was this spike of an antenna. It looked like not a normal antenna. It was like this big gray spike that came down out of it, maybe 6 feet long. And it had these, it was gray, and it had these greenish gray plates on it, maybe 4 or 5 of them along the length of this spike. And this is all happening very quickly. I mean, we're talking seconds here. And at that point, my passenger yells to me, "Hey, 2 more just came out of the cloud above us." And that's when I started to freak out. The hair literally stood up on the back of my neck, and I felt like we were in some sort of an ambush, that we were had been observed, and and this was like the culmination of it, where all of them came together to see us somehow. And I told him, we're getting the hell out of here. I pushed the nose down as we came around the turn to head back to the airport. And he then tells me, because he had eyes on them the whole time, he said, they're heading off to the west very, very fast. So we got closer to the airport, and I flew into another thermal, and I said, I got to relax here before I try to land, chill out a little bit. So we thermaled for a while, climbed up a few thousand feet. And well, prior to that, though, after we had seen the object off my right wing or my left wing, and it started to depart with the 2 others, I radioed my soaring buddies who were up over the mountains too, and not far from me. I said, "Did you guys see anything? See what's going on over here?" And they said, "No, we haven't seen anything unusual." So, we got back to the airport. We thermaled, relaxed a little bit. We got back on the ground. Unfortunately, my phone was in my pocket underneath my seat belts, and he didn't bring a camera with him. So his girlfriend at the time said, the 2 of you have seen something. Here's a sheet of paper. Go draw what you saw separately. And so we did that, and we came up with similar looking objects. His was more detailed because he was really staring at it, focused on it while we were turning. And then after that, that night, I called the New York State Police to report drones in the area playing, this close encounter stuff. They kind of laughed it off and told me, well, you better, tell your friends in aviation. So then I called the FAA the next day in Albany. And there's a guy there who was supposed to be tracking drone activity in the area. And he said they had no record of any drones. And then some time went by, and I found the NARCAP site about reporting anomalous behavior or sightings. And I spoke to Richard Haines, and he asked me to file a Freedom of Information Act request with the FAA to get the radar data. And the FAA sent me back a letter that said they had lost the radar data. And so he said, well, let's escalate that to the director in Washington, D.C., either in D.C. or Atlanta. I can't remember. But that person wrote back and said, yeah, we can't provide it. It's gone. We don't have it. And so, my fellow club members, they saw our drawings. I said, can you guys help me find a manufacturer of something that could make something like this? A lot of the guys are getting into drones at that point. And so they looked all over on the internet to try to find manufacturers of drones that resembled what we saw, and nobody could find anything close to it. And it's kind of it. I did, Richard hooked me up with some people in Seattle, and I was out there on business, and he arranged for me to have an interview with them. I think I forgot to tell you this, Todd, but they wanted to hypnotize me. It was after work. I was ready to catch a red eye home, and I wouldn't go for the hypnosis. But the guy that interviewed me told me that chances are what I saw was not from this world, and that the Earth was being visited by multiple species, intelligent species, and that's kind of blew my mind. But
Well, this is a point where to say there's a lot to unpack would be a bit of an understatement. This very quickly happened after August 9th. August 9th was the event. August 10th, you were speaking to the FAA.
yeah,
And within a couple of days after that, you were speaking to Richard Haines of NARCAP. And
yes,
for those of you who are watching the video version of this, you've seen me flash pieces of the report on the screen, both the title of it as well as the drawings that you mentioned earlier. And this report will be on the website supporting this episode. And this was August 27th that the report was published. So we're talking less than 3 weeks after this happened, it got published. But let me unpack a little bit more. The role of the community that was involved in this. You had the significant other of your passenger actually give you excellent pieces of advice, telling you to write it down and then do it separately. So your memories were fresh. You reported it to the FAA, as is proper, and their response, let's put that aside for a minute. And you reported it to NARCAP, which was an unusual thing because they are not typically a place where people go to report these kinds of events. And this report, which is very detailed, with a couple of exceptions, probably, about the information they had, they said something about the height of the object was 69 feet. You're saying it was about 6 feet tall.
yeah, yeah. There was some miscommunication there with my passenger when they interviewed him, and he didn't push back. He was a kid at the time. I
And
think a little, intimidated.
and your community that you were with, the fellow pilots, you're with a group of glider pilots who were in an organization. So you had someone to lean on immediately to help you out in a situation and to help figure out what's going on. And by the way, I've seen the drawing. I've looked for a drawing similar to that or aircraft similar to that. Nothing comes close. You said a minute or two ago that it went from the top of the mountain, Wyndham High Peak, to your wingtip in about a second. And from looking at the distance, that seemed to be in excess of the speed of sound.
Okay.
Did you hear
Okay.
anything like a sonic boom when this thing?
No, it was just the wind noise outside of the glider that you normally hear while you're soaring.
What would you say was the closest approach it had to either your left wingtip or your right wingtip?
Within 100 feet.
And did you hear any engine noises, any propulsion noises, anything like that?
Nothing. It was silent and moving very smoothly through the air. It wasn't, herky jerky like maybe a drone would be moving around. And it got really close. That's why I filed a near miss report. I mean, like, if that was a drone controlled by someone in the area here, why would they be doing that to me? Why would that do that close approach to another aircraft? You know,
Was it at all possible that this thing was big enough to have someone inside of it controlling it?
no, I don't think so.
So that
No,
larger
it's
part toward the top, about how wide across do you think that was?
maybe 3 to 4 feet tops. Yeah, it was not very big. It was taller than it was wide. You know,
Now, other than the FAA, at some point, did you talk to anybody else within government, any other reports filed?
the state police, New York State Police, the FAA, and NARCAP. That was it. And then the group in Seattle.
So at any point was, I don't know, what would be I don't know if the UAS sightings database was up and running back then, but what about ASRS? Did you contact them at all?
Oh yeah, yeah. I filed my report pretty quickly with ASRS. I knew about that from my flight training, just because it was a near miss that should be reported, um, and after that, within a week, I would say, I received a call from someone who said that they were at the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory. They asked me a series of questions. They didn't give me any names. And then within a few days after that call, I got another call from Lawrence Livermore and another set of questions. They thanked me, and that was the end of that. Never heard from them again.
Now, I spoke to you about this briefly before, and I was racking my brains thinking, Has Lawrence Livermore ever shown up in any accident or incident investigation that I know of? I couldn't think of anything. How about you, John?
No, they usually don't come out, especially early. They may have some follow-up, but usually it's a long time afterwards, at least 6, 8 months
You mean the
before
ASRS or Lawrence Livermore?
Lawrence Livermore. Takes a while to work through the system, so if the NTSB gets involved with an accident and we find things that we think other agencies would be interested in, it takes a while for us at the NTSB to digest that. And then they would send it along the proper channels. So it would come in at a fairly high level and then it would filter down to the worker bee level at any other federal organization. That doesn't happen in 24 hours. That happens, at least weeks, if not months before it happens. It's not viewed as something you would jump on immediately.
Well, now
So,
then, you're talking about the NTSB. In your experience on the board, did you ever see anything with a near midair collision or midair collision with anything like this kind of sequence of events?
well, I know of one other collision where with an airplane, the airplane actually crashed in the water, and it was a GA airplane, and I remember right, it was only one person on board. It was in Tampa Bay, and when we brought it up, nothing was abnormal about the airplane except we found scrape marks with a type of paint that we couldn't identify through chemical analysis. So, and that's where it died. It never went any further. And the only reason why we brought the airplane up was the families were very concerned and they were persistent. So we went after it and found the airplane and brought it up. So, and I don't even think it ever went to a report. I had the raw data from the investigator at one point, and I may still have it someplace, but I haven't seen it in years.
Getting back to Bob and the actual encounter, what really struck me was the decision making that you made. This is something that was literally out of the blue, nice blue sky that day,
Yeah.
something you didn't expect, something that made no sense, something that was immediately threatening to the safety of the aircraft and everyone on board. And you made a series of decisions. Looking back, how would you discuss or how would you put into context your immediate responses? And then looking back at it later, whether or not you had any critique about how you responded to the situation?
I tried to increase separation with the object, even though it was getting closer to me, and it was happening so fast as I was turning, and I was turning away from it, but it was outpacing me on the outside of my turn, and I just wanted to get out of there, get away from it, find myself in a safer position in relation to these things. So.
And at some point it was in front of your airplane, right?
Yes.
So it wasn't like you were drafting something. It was
No.
It had a direction of its own, maybe a power source of its own.
Yeah, I have no idea what was powering it. It was directly in front of us, and then I turned because it was very close, and I kept turning this way, trying to. I was in the thermal at the same time, which is pushing us up.
But it was it pushing that up as well?
No, it wasn't. That's kind of an odd thing.
Now, a couple of things about the other reaction there. You mentioned two things. One, you had to spend some time in the thermal later on to sort of cool out a little bit. And the other
Yeah.
was you felt like you were getting jumped. I mean, that
Yes.
sounds like two completely different emotions happening back to back.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when he said there were two coming out of the cloud above us, and I had my eyes on it over here for briefly a couple of seconds. I mean, I had this almost animal fear response with the hair going up on my neck, and that was not not just saying that. I mean, it actually happened, where you get chills and the hair on your neck stands up, and you're having a reaction, a fear response that you didn't even know you could have in your body. And I just felt like, okay, this is not normal. What I'm looking at, you first you think you're going to see the first thing your brain does is you say to yourself, we're going to see a drone today, and here comes this thing. You think it's going to be some drone, some model of drone that you've seen before, and then all of a sudden you're looking at it, and it doesn't look like anything you've ever seen before, and you kind of come to a conclusion kind of rapidly, like, where did this come from? This isn't from here. And that's what starts the the visceral reaction that you start to have to it. And then when you find out there's two more of them, it's not just you and this drone, it's you and three of them. It's like, what's going on here? There's something going on. And how do you control drones in a cloud like that? Fly them in for formation, possibly, and then have them come down, descend over the glider, with this other one. Very coordinated type of activity. I just felt like it was something's very wrong here, and I need to get out of here before something else happens.
Well, let me talk a little bit more about your maturity as a pilot at that point when this event happened. At that point, you were licensed as a glider pilot and also a private pilot. About how many hundreds of hours did you have in gliders and non-gliders at that point?
In gliders, I had over 200 hours. In Cessnas, I had another maybe 150 hours. Not a lot of hours, because it's a hobby, and we do it on weekends during the summertime.
How do you think your response would have been if this had been within the first 10 or 15 hours of you being at the controls of any aircraft?
I don't know. I think I would have handled it pretty much the same way.
That is a scary thought.
Yeah. When I was flying Cessnas a long time ago, and my wife and I flew to Long Island in November, and we were heading home. We flew into severe turbulence and snow squalls, and I had to land at Albany Airport flying sideways, basically, because the wind was so strong. I was a kid then. My judgment was terrible. When they said there were reports of severe turbulence, I should never have gone. I thought I could handle it, but with experience and age, you learn to not do stupid things.
Now,
Yeah.
even at
All
that event with severe turbulence, did you have the hair standing on the back of your head like you did?
No. I was in touch with Albany, and they told me to land, and I said, I am coming in.
With your Albany event, you were in touch with Albany and you were able to talk with them on the way down.
Yeah.
During the encounter, did you have air traffic control on the radio as well?
No, where we fly here over the Catskills, it's very uncontrolled airspace. There's a few jet routes over us, but that's very high up. All of the jet traffic is at least 20,000 feet, and most of them are descending into Newark or JFK over us, and so we have pretty much free reign. I think it's Class G airspace. So we're rarely in. I've never needed to be in touch with Albany in the glider. And additionally, our gliders don't have ADS-B or transponders. They're, and so we've never venture into the zone near Albany.
Now let's move forward a little bit. This event happened. Within 3 weeks, there was a report out from NARCAP, so you were in constant communication with people talking about that. And of course, you wrote everything down. So you had a lot of time to go over this in your head fairly soon after this.
Yes.
Going forward, did you have any after effects like being afraid to go up again or getting freaked out
Well,
out of the blue type of thing?
yeah. The following weekend, my passenger showed back up again and wanted to go for a ride. And I said to him, well, I can't guarantee you the same level of excitement as last weekend. But I noticed that when we were taking off and being towed up, I definitely felt like I had something to work through. I think I had a little bit of PTSD from that experience, and I had to get it out of my system in a hurry in order to fly the glider and stay focused on that. So yeah, it kind of shook me up, and I had nightmares for about 6 months after that too.
Now,
That's
this is
scary.
one of those things where I think it is absolutely like what happens in non-UAP events all the time in aviation. Someone, whether a young pilot or experienced pilot or professional pilot, has an event, has a scare, has something, and they have to work through it on one level or another. And this brings up an issue we've talked about before on the show about pilot mental health and the lack of openness that people have about it because, frankly, um, it could jeopardize careers by doing so. And here's a case where you didn't have a career to jeopardize. You flew on your own nickel for your own pleasure, but still, it's something to deal with. And I mean, what role, if any, did your immediate aviation community or the broader community, let's say the FAA or other professional services, could they have played a role in helping you here?
Well, the response from the FAA, when I asked them if there was any drones, he said no. What happened? I told the guy what happened. He had a chuckle over it, and I thought his response wasn't that great. Um, so I don't know. I just then there some people
Typical,
want to kid you around about little green men and stuff like that. So
typical response.
yeah,
Exactly. And that's one of the reasons why we don't get many more reports. I've been told more than once of people that have seen things and never reported them because they don't want to be talked about seeing little green men and so on. The negativity that comes with uh, coming forward and saying you saw something that's strange. And remember for years we discounted all that stuff, weather balloons and the
yeah,
military downplayed everything. So we haven't matured yet to take these things seriously enough. It's coming, but we may have missed a lot of opportunities to identify some of this phenomenon because of the attitudes.
yeah,
And the disclosures a couple of years ago from all the aviation authorities around the world that have had sightings in lots of places, some of them similar, certainly leave one to wonder what the hell we got going on. People don't realize that radar isn't the greatest in the world. There are areas in the world there's absolutely no coverage. In fact, if you're 200 miles off the coast, I live in Boston, 200 miles off the coast of Boston, there is no radar. I forget where the cutoff is. It might only be 125 miles, but there is no radar out there. And so there's who knows what's going on out there.
yeah. And I had never seen anything before uh, in all my life. It's
We are getting more people coming forward in places. And then we have these great big events like the one in Chicago right at the airport that occurred a few years ago. And, we get them in Alaska. They're everywhere. They're
yeah,
everywhere. And, the government, when they have no answer, they tend to poo-hoo it, like you said, and laugh like the FAA inspector did. And maybe that's his defensive mechanism because he doesn't know and he doesn't know what to do. I mean, we're all only human. We have parameters in our own lives and challenges, and those FAA jobs can be challenging sometimes.
oh yeah,
And let me speak briefly about the NARCAP report again. You were identified only by initials in this report. So your colleagues, your neighbors would have had no idea this was you. Now you're on our podcast, going out to a lot of people in the aviation community. Have you ever done anything between then and now that basically put your face out there in front of the public?
no, never.
So what do you think what good will come from you being on our episode today?
That these things are happening. That may try to maintain your cool if something happens. See and avoid as usual. It's another aircraft. May not be from here, but they're in our atmosphere, and try to put some space between you and them so that you don't run into them.
Let's assume for a second that whatever was operating these three aircraft, that there was a person who was totally responsible for it, and you were sitting in a, back of a quiet restaurant together with this person. What would you tell them?
what were you thinking? You know, if these are your drones, why are you doing this? I mean, and what is it, fun? Just it was very risky. It could have gotten us killed. Um, you shouldn't be doing that. Shouldn't be, I would take, that person shouldn't be flying drones.
You know,
We've had reports around here. People, I've had them call me because I'm the airport manager for Freehold, and asking if they could fly their drones near the airport. And I said, "Are you aware of any of the regulations?" No, and I have to send them the link to the FAA site on drones. And I think a lot of people just buy them and just start using them and don't really know what they're doing.
And by Freehold, you mean Freehold, New York, which was an airport near Albany.
Yes, that's the airport we fly out of.
from the time that you first saw this object to the time that you left it, about how much time elapsed?
Had to be under a minute, 2 minutes, because you're flying, the turning. We were probably going about 50, 55 knots, and the turn goes quickly in the thermal, and it was a very quick experience.
So in that minute or two, it came from 500 feet above the ground out 3 miles plus away from you, then came back that distance and hovered around your airplane for 10, 15 seconds, 20 seconds,
Less probably. It was quick. It was very fast.
and then joined up with his friends and disappeared,
Yeah. Yeah.
heading west.
Yes.
Now,
Yep.
as we're recording this, it's late December, and this is shortly after massive amounts of media attention for drones over New Jersey and New York. And I'll say this, none of those reports, not even the reports that came from overseas, from England and other places, sound anything remotely like what you saw. This was not night, this was daytime. This was not anything with flashing lights on it. This was something with a distinct, unique configuration that didn't
Yes.
have any analog with any commercially available drone at that time.
No. No. Yeah. I mean, most of the drones you see today have lights on them, and you can hear them. Um, this thing was quiet, quick.
And
Just
whoever or whatever was controlling this was doing things that were highly risky. For example, have you ever been in formation flight with anyone at any time for any reason, except for this event?
Oh yeah, flying in thermals with other gliders. You have to be coordinated. Being on tow behind a tow plane, that's basically formation flying. So you have to understand separation and be aware of your situational awareness, and you know, and especially the etiquette when it comes to entering and leaving thermals with other gliders. So
So
you
it,
can get very close unexpectedly.
but the level of closeness and the speed at which this object came, was it anything like what you had seen before?
No, I've never gotten that close to another aircraft.
Yeah, that's what I've been focused on, is listening to what you're saying about the speed that this thing was moving, the changing of direction, coming back towards you, getting in front of you. Because if someone wanted to say that this was a balloon of some kind, it would not go in front of you. It would be dragging in your vortex from behind. It doesn't make any sense of those normal answers that people or the government will sometimes give. So it definitely is a strange phenomenon, especially since you were in position to see if it was powered, and there was no obvious power to it. In fact, that the other drones came from undisclosed distance to join up before you turned off. Those are all coordinated and very strange events. So, and the government will just put it in their file until something causes them to resurrect it again. I read that the report is 15, 16 pages. They did a decent job of looking at it. but there's no answer to it.
No.
It's just, you just got to chalk it up to something happened. We don't know what it is. Nobody got hurt. So thank God. So we
Yeah.
just filed away until something else happens, and hopefully something else that happens is also so benign that we don't have, people hurt.
Yeah.
Now, this will go out on the internet. And of course, the internet is filled with people with various purposes in life, some of which would be to say, oh, you're a liar. You're trying to do this to make money. You're trying to do this to be famous. You're just making this up. What do you have to say in a family-friendly way to those people who think that somehow or another you were deluded, mentally ill, paid off by the government, all the usual excuses?
This happened. I let you know about it. You wanted to talk about it. I have not been broadcasting it over the years. It's something that happened to me, and I felt that it was important, and I took detailed notes on what happened, the events of that day, and um, just wanted people to be aware that this happened. And we don't know what's going on in our atmosphere, and there are things happening that are beyond our explanation right now, and we don't have any control over it.
Yeah, we know it's been happening for a long time. There was never a good place to collect it. Now we're collecting it. Now we're finally admitting that there's something out there
Yeah, I
that we
mean,
don't understand.
when Todd, you mentioned this going out on the internet, not my email or anything, right?
No.
No,
Okay.
Nothing
no,
about your
but you
background.
mentioned
I'm
the
sure they can
airport.
find me, but
Yeah, you mentioned the airport, so they're guaranteed they're going to have a way to get to you.
oh, right. Okay.
And I believe the NARCAP it gave that much it gave a general location where it happened. And
Yeah.
again, anyone who'd like to figure out, well, where was this happening, they can figure that out. So do read
Yeah.
that document. And this segues into a tradition we have here, the second to the last word and the last word. Of course, John gets the last word. And my second to last word is to everyone out there in the past, in the present, or the future who has an unusual aviation experience like this. As a pilot, as a passenger, as a maintainer, as a ground staffer, and you think it's something strange, potentially dangerous, potentially hazardous, report it. Now, some things get reported automatically. If you're speaking with air traffic control and you have a near midair collision, there's a process by which those things are reported, and that's reported hundreds of times a year. Otherwise, one of my most favorite places to send things is NASA's Aviation Safety Reporting System, ASRS. There is a very specific process that's anonymous. You can put in your contact information. That will never be released to the public. They will summarize the event, and if there are several of you who saw something, they'll likely summarize it into one report that people can learn from. And even if you don't submit it to ASRS, again, they have a very specific way of doing things to guide you to get your thoughts on paper for your own benefit. Even if you tell no one but yourself, do that. Have a record that you can work with in the future because you may have things to work out, including you may see something similar like that in the future. It would be great to have notes from the past to compare those two.
Without a doubt. And I would really encourage them to file the NASA report. Because they distribute it to the FAA sanitized. They also distribute it to other areas of the government that they believe would have an interest in that information. So it will get played. It's not a dead letter office. You give it into the ASRS system and it gets analyzed and it gets distributed to people who have a desire to try to make heads or tails out of every event. And as I always say with my preaching at the end of the show, and I'm sure many of you are tired of listening to it. I'm tired of saying it, but it's so truthful. It has to be repeated over and over again because of the number of accidents that we digest on this show. We go through all kinds of accidents, not only just in the United States, but also around the world where they have decent reporting systems. Many areas don't. But we go into those reports and we have common denominators. Lousy pre-planning for your flight, especially weather. Make sure you do the weather where you are, where you're going, and everything in between. And make sure, because the weather is dynamic, pay attention to it en route. There's no excuse today with Sirius FM radio weather system, and there's lots available to you. If you have an iPad, you get all kinds of information. When you go to the airport, make sure you do it a second time. If it's something different, then figure out why. When you get out to your airplane, do a good pre-flight. I've started in my maintenance talks. I do some maintenance events, FAA safety events. I've started to talk about mechanics helping the pilots understand what a good pre-flight is. You know, mechanics, I watch mechanics all the time when I walk out to an airplane. They're looking over their airplane every second that they're around an airplane. It's human nature. Mechanics do inspect, so to speak. They look at the airplane. I've asked mechanics to help their pilots understand what they're looking for. It drives me crazy when we find an accident that a cotter pin was missing from a castellated nut in a flight control, and it came loose. And the pilot was saying there's something wrong with, in one case, there's something wrong with my autopilot because it's porpoising. And it wasn't the autopilot at all. It was his hardware coming unglued on his elevators. And he didn't, and he should have seen it. It was out in the open, and he didn't know it. He did, even though he had quite a few hours in the airplane. I mean, hundreds. And he missed it. So, and then after you get up in the air, put that head on a swivel. We have so many young pilots today, not only young in time in the air, not necessarily in age, but there's so many out there, and they're learning. And when you learn, you make mistakes. Don't become part of their problem. Keep your head on a swivel and stay a safe distance from everybody else that's in the air. So please, please fly safely.
Thank you for checking out our show. We really value our listeners and subscribers. Our podcast gets ranked by you and how much you like it. So please give us 5 stars in your podcast platform.
We want to keep in contact with you. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and of course, YouTube.
You can email the show at flightsafetydetectives@gmail.com. By the way, if you're on YouTube, we're really working on growing the channel, and it helps if you all send in comments. Please do that, and we read all the comments.
And be sure to subscribe. Remember, if you're in the market for aviation insurance, you can save 5% with Avemco just by mentioning our show. Visit them at www.avemco.com. That's it for this episode of the Flight Safety Detective. Until the next episode, fly safe.